All right, welcome back to another episode of the Kitchen Table Podcast where business gets done. I'm your host, Ken Baden. And today we are here with Reed Knife. Is it Nyffeler or am I saying that
Nyffeler.
right?
Yep. It's Nyffeler. Yep.
Nyffeler. And I was like this close. I looked at it just to see if I was going to say it wrong. I still said it wrong, but I got close. Reed Nyffeler, who is accomplished author, entrepreneur, and here with us today to talk about all the above. Reed, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah. Thanks for asking, Ken. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. So we were discussing some things before the podcast, which we usually do, but and I try to save all the best stuff for the actual podcast. But one thing we were talking about, Reed, was you're a franchise. Is it a franchisor? Is that what it is? That the correct
Yeah. So
terminology?
18 years ago, I started a franchise concept. In fact, I might even go like before that. And I know I largely,
Yeah. Please, please, please. That's gonna be my next question, anyways. Is tell us how you got here. So I already
yeah.
told you that.
Well, I have growing up, I had a construction background. Actually, my dad was a home builder and actually started as a roofer. Right
Oh, okay.
out of
Very cool.
college. Yeah, so he was a industrial arts teacher, and then before he had my oldest brother, he wanted to earn some side money, so he started roofing in the '70s. And he was afraid of heights and everything else, and so. But then, as the industry started growing, the home building industry started growing, he left teaching and became a superintendent for a home building company. He did that for 45 years. And so when I was in my teens, he gave me, he said, hey, you can go be a block layer for this contractor. And so that's exactly what I ended up doing at 14. One of my first jobs was, laboring for a block layer. And I did that for 7 years. I did block laying, and then I was a framer for a period of time. And so that
Bricklaying.
led
That's a
to me
big one.
graduating college, and then I went to work for DeWalt Power Tools, and so that was my
Oh,
first
very cool.
professional job, and that's when the cordless tools were all coming out, and so it was cool to see the industry pivot and change, right? And so then after a period of time, I went to work for a tech company that basically was the beginning of the QR code, and this is the early 2000s, and so you could go scan on your Web 1.0 phone and pull up the tech, and so I really saw that technology is going to change the world. And then as the tech bubble burst, I went to go work for a Christmas light manufacturer, and we would call on all your industry trades, your land and landscapers, and they would install Christmas lights, in the off season. So they'd already have the mowing, the landscaping, and then whatever services, the painter. We had painters, and I had roofers as well because they're already on the roof, and they're doing these things, and they're making money just for Christmas light installing lights. And so that was my first time getting into franchising. And I realized, okay, these guys know how to physically do the install and the work, but they need help with the financial side of the business. They need help with how to get more
Yes, they do.
clients. They need more help
Definitely
with
do.
everything else. And so I leveraged all that and pulled it all together. At the time, there was a software called Pro Landscape, and we would edit in our Christmas lights. You could take a picture of a home, and there's things that in every industry now like this, and you could edit in the Christmas lights. And so you could show the consumer what you were going to be able to do. And then, we began to sell franchises left and right, but I was not the owner. And so I'm like, wow, this can really work. And so then what I loved about franchising was I love the entrepreneurial spirit, right? People that can own their own business and start themselves. But as we know, starting a business is hard. You might be the best roofer, the best plumber, the best electrician, but you don't know how to go get customers. You don't know how to price it. You don't know how to manage teams, et cetera. And so then I'm like, all right, I want to be a franchisor, right? I know that I have ability to help people get better at their business and in their business, and I want people that are committed leaders. So I have this purpose statement is through intuitive interaction, propel leaders beyond their self-imposed barriers to live out their unique purpose in life. So I
Mm.
need leaders. I need to interact with leaders. I need people that are diligent and willing to do that. And that's what a franchisee is. Someone that, they said, hey, I know I can start a business, but I don't know if I can be successful, but I'm willing to take that risk. And so a franchisor basically gives you the recipe. So we're
Mm.
basically saying, hey, go to this client, price it at this price, use this vendor, and deliver this service. And then we will have the software and metrics to help you do that efficiently and profitably. And then at the end, we can help you sell it. A lot of businesses in the construction trade in particular, it's hard to sell them because, a lot of it's dependent upon the owner. In a franchise concept, you're building that into a brand instead of a person. So someone buys the brand instead of the name of the individual, right? And so that also makes a difference when you have that brand because the brand stands behind it. I always use this analogy. McDonald's is a franchise concept, of course. So if McDonald's was next to, Ken's burger joint, which one is going to hold more value? is how integrated is Ken in that business, and everybody knows him, they love him, and everything else. But McDonald's like, okay, I know I'm going to get support from the franchisor. I'll pay more for that, and that's why franchising is valuable. And that's kind of in a nutshell what it is. It's a recipe of a business put together that is universally tried and true. There is some expense or royalty with that, but at the same time, as you have a much higher probability of success and a much higher exit when you sell.
Yeah, I was actually curious when you said sell. I'm like, you mean sell a product or actually sell the business? So
Sell the business.
franchisors or franchisees have no, there's no problems with actually exiting. In fact, they're encouraged to do that.
Well, eventually, we all retire or sell. I mean, there's any number of reasons. I mean, I think less than 10% of our network sells a year, kind of like a house. And so, when people are at the age of retirement, they take that nest egg and sell it, or, they get, family dynamics change, get a divorce or, ill or whatever, and they change, or they want to move somewhere else, right? They just want to move out of the state or city they're in. And so they want to find someone to buy that business, any number of reasons, and they relocate and sell. And it gives you the ability to do it. And so people typically stay for about 20 years, but at 20 years, you're figuring, okay, what am I going to do next? And
Right. And then franchisor will help the franchisee sell.
Yep, because we're defining our territory by, zip codes or area. So that area is exclusive rights. That's what a franchisor operates. So you're exclusively staying in a geographic area. And so someone wants that area. So the neighboring franchisee may buy it. Another person that wants to own that area would buy it. We're in Omaha, Nebraska here. So I always have people that are like, I'd love to own a business in Omaha. That's where my family is. And I want one that's profitable. And so, they're buying the cash flow like you would typically see, and they're buying that area.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the concept. I worked for State Farm. I believe they operate a very similar model, right? Where like the agent there, he had to pay for everybody and pay all his own expenses, but obviously he had connections to corporate, and they would had all their help and access to all the corporate's claims and all that stuff. So, but whenever those agents retired, they would like sell their books of business, and that was something that I was hoping to benefit from myself, but they actually changed the way they parcel those out, so it's not as sweet anymore. But it sounds like a very similar concept. I think Window World does the same thing if you're familiar with that.
Yep. There's a lot of franchise concepts, and really there's two different models. And I think you see a distributor model and a franchise model. A distributor model means that you're a primary distributor of that product. So Anderson Windows, as an example, they're probably not necessarily a franchise, but they're exclusively buying from that, or certain organizations like that. They have a partnership affiliation, but then you have a franchisor where you're paying a royalty. So, all your sports programs like the NBA or NFL or are franchises. So there's a percentage of the revenue that's going to the group. The owners own the stadium and they own the players, and they make a margin on that. So franchising is everywhere versus a distributor model, like in air conditioning. You're distributing your Trane air conditionings, and you would be one of the few. They don't give too many because you're, competing, but that's the difference there.
Okay. Now that we've gotten the 101 on that, unless you're already currently a franchisee and you're listening to this show, I mean, I've never, had the pleasure, but I've been on the path. But I wanted to better understand that, because now we can dive into, you also, one of your current, I think your newest book. So one of the books is relevant to leadership.
Yeah.
Right? The new book, however, is more talking about sort of helping to build a business in all the semantics and all the sauce that go into that.
Yeah, so the newest book that just came out is Lead Exponentially, right? And so in that instance, leading exponentially is really about, and I think if you're a small business owner, you're always working in your business, right? I mean, you're responsible for, the payroll, you're responsible for getting new clients, you're responsible for ordering the supplies, managing the teams, and likely in many cases, as a small business owner, probably the best worker, right? I mean, you could probably, roof the house the best, or plumb the house the best, or whatever role you're in. And really that is, you can get tired and older, and, you've done that so many times. And so how do you work on your business? And that's really what Lead Exponentially helps people do, is to get to the point where that business is not a job, but it's an asset, something that you're building of value. And so many people start a business because, especially a small one, because they don't like working for their boss and they see they can do it better. And that's that beginning of that entrepreneurial spirit, right? And so it's inside of you, and you're like, I can do this better. But then you start in your business, like, wait a minute, I didn't think about all, making payroll, and I didn't think about the taxes I got to file. I didn't think about getting insurance for this. I didn't think about hiring people or background checks or drug tests or all these other things. And now I'm not spending any time when I could make X number of dollars an hour doing my day-to-day job. Now I thought I could just get more money and save what the manager was making, but now I realize I'm actually not making as much money because I didn't know how to do all these things and I'm making mistakes and it's more costly, right? And so ultimately what Lead Exponentially does is helps you understand how to categorize your time, helps you to categorize your team, and helps you to develop them in accordance with that, right? I mean, sometimes as business owners, we're like, I just want to hand it all off to somebody to do it for me,
Hmm.
right? Because we just don't want to worry about it. But what we don't realize is they don't have the same passion about that service or our business as we do. They have passion about that service. So they're there to make money too. So that doesn't mean it's inefficient. And then you're also, held to their standard, right? I mean, if they go away, they're like, oh no, I can't lose my accountant, or oh, this person, they're the only one that knows how to do payroll. Or I mean, my one contract guy is here, so what do I do? Now you're held hostage by that particular service. And what we're doing is saying, okay, of all the things you need a payroll person to do, right, or pick a role, what do you need them to do, and what should you understand? Right? You need them to do this task, which is, and really what we want to do as leaders is we want to do the time consuming high volume, day to day, and it breaks it down by daily or hourly or weekly. You do these daily. You get someone to do the daily and hourly, but you need to check on how much you're spending and who you're paying weekly, right? Just go at this stage of the business, dive in and make sure that they haven't, paid someone overtime unnecessarily, or
Hmm.
they haven't given themselves a raise, but you don't need to manually enter in all the data, right? And so that's subdividing the role instead of handing it all to that payroll person and then never looking at it. And so that's what Lead Exponentially is it teaches you foundationally how to give away responsibility, but not all of it. So you still have oversight, and you do that based on the stage and size of the business. And then when should you have oversight, and what is something that you should give up a little bit of control over, and when?
Yeah, I love that. I thought that there was a book that hadn't come out yet. Am I incorrect in that statement,
Yeah,
or?
there's brand new. I literally just finished it. It won't be released until the summer of 2026. But
Oh,
essentially,
are we
yeah,
not allowed to talk about that yet?
we
Okay.
can. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how inside your listeners want information on here, because I mean, I'm sure it'll be a global bestseller. But the brand new is really how to start a new idea, right? How to start it from the origination of it all, and how do you build that to global scale as well. So,
And scale that into an actual business and scale that.
yeah. Our current business, I'm in 49 states and 9 countries. And so really what I'm talking about is the
Wow.
18 years that it took me to get to that point, and really what decisions at each level was there, right? So we're doing hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're in every state but Vermont, actually. So I don't know if you have any listeners there that want to buy a security franchise, then we could be in all 50 states. But, that's where, and of
And
course,
specifically, by the way, because we haven't touched on that security franchise, can you elaborate on like what you do? I mean, you told me, but.
sure. Yeah, so we are a guard and patrol business. So we have
Mhm.
physical security, and we
Mhm.
have, the core most lucrative part of it is doing patrols, where you're driving through an apartment complex, making sure that their pool is locked up after hours, and that nobody's, blaring their music too loud so that the nurse downstairs, can sleep at night before she goes to work the next day, right? And so we have that all across. And so we largely have police and military who are original franchisees. They get out of the military, the policing at 40 years old or whatever, and they know security. And so they dive into this business. They're great at security, but they need that business element that I was referring to before. And so that's primarily our audience, our individuals. And so we got clients in every state, but one obviously. And so we go in and offer the service, and we leverage technology. In our platform, the technology is like Uber, right? So it tells you where you need to be, what you need to do, and how much you're getting paid to do it. And then it manages your payroll too. So it's really that's part of the franchise system, right? It's a software that tells them, here, go here now, and then while you're there, spend this much amount of time. Because if you spend more time, you're going to lose money. You're only charging them this much. And so it's kind of a workforce management tool as well. And that's a proprietary software we own. So that's really what
Wow.
drove our growth, is our approach to the security industry, and then leveraging the technology to make it more profitable than you would be able to do on your own. Because as a business owner, I'm sure you can waste hours and not even think about it. You're driving inefficiently, you go back and forth to the distributor, and you wasted 4 hours when it should have been a 1 hour job. And that's what this
Mhm.
helps you do.
I love that. And I love that concept too of sounds like, you try and find ex-military or ex-police that want to buy into these franchises
Yep.
and teach them how to do this. Then I'm sure they're hiring other folks that are similar to be, to actually work there. That's very smart, actually. I can see why that's been successful. That's
Yeah. And security, there's a lot of people that want to get into it, maybe in policing, but policing's
mm,
changed too, right? I mean, over the last, as I'm sure the public would agree with. And so these people care about serving their communities, but they don't want the political component of serving their
right.
communities. So they can serve their communities in a private way. And the best way to describe that for our business is kind of like USPS, the Postal Service versus UPS, right? They both deliver packages to you, but one is paid by the government, one's privately paid. So,
Hmm.
I mean, ultimately, we're privately paid. So, nothing against the USPS, but you don't have real visibility on all your stuff coming in, and you can't really control that. But UPS, you can say, get there tomorrow at 8 a.m., and it will. So that's the difference of private security too. And it's just less political in that regard. So,
Yeah, I love. I mean, I think I've been so many places that I've seen those in action. I've never thought about that. So that's really smart. You said hundreds of millions. That's awesome, man. It's
yeah.
very cool. And you're also doing some service-based businesses as well, like window cleanings.
Yeah. So then one of the things that we're launching out of this is that software that I referred to is it can be used anywhere. And so I really want to change, part of this from franchising standpoint is largely franchise has become very expensive and lower success in a general sense, right? I mean, what used to cost a couple $100,000 is now millions of dollars to build a building and get open. And then, when you used to be able to mail a postcard, now how do you go advertise online to get all these interested parties and find the appropriate people? So that is it's the franchise demographic is aged. So I see this next generation of two things that I'm building for. One, the 20-year-olds that want autonomy and freedom and quick earnings. And then they also don't have a lot of money. So then what I'm doing is building in the B2B business to business space using this software, much like Uber, right? The difference between Uber and a taxi cab is that you had to go ride somebody else's car in a taxi cab. Uber, you hop in your car and you run an application. So it creates a super low cost. You're just utilizing an asset already. And so we've lowered our franchise fee to literally no money down, actually. And you're building it off of sweat equity, just like Uber. You're paying a little bit more for that ride, but you own your time and you own the car and all the other pieces. And so then we're taking those same leads, right? We have thousands of clients across the country, and we're saying, hey, we meet with this decision maker, and this decision maker also has a need for other services. And what I'm doing with this is targeting blue collar services that are, they don't require a tremendous amount of licensure, right? So I'll give an example. So if you go look at Jiffy Lube, which is a large franchisor, they're saying, hey, you can take it to your car dealership and change the oil, but I'm going to charge you $80, $90, $100. And that person is very expensive because they have to be able to change out your engine and transmission and all these other things. And you're underutilizing their skills, and they're going to change your oil. But while we're here, we're going to find all these problems. So that's largely the industries. And so, however, Jiffy Lube says, I'm just going to change your oil and check the air in your tires. I can't do your engine and everything else. And I can go get a low-end labor to do that. Those are the types of services I'm looking for, right? And so one that I'm launching is Filter Go. And that's simply it's this simple. You're changing the air filters in the air conditioning units. So literally on a quarterly basis, using the application, you go to a commercial business, you climb up the ladder, you take a picture, you show them, hey, your filter hasn't been changed in 4 years. Do you want me to change your filter?
Hmm.
Sure. You go down, talk to them, run the credit card right there, then and there. It goes in the queue. It says order this filter at 24 by 24, install it on this date, and the algorithm tells you when to install it. You go install it that date, you take a picture, and you're paid. Just that quick and easy.
Wow.
So then if we see a problem with the air conditioning unit, say, hey, you may want to call your AC guy because you need a new unit, right? We don't do any of that, just like Jiffy Lube. We refer you to the dealership. And so we're really looking for areas and industries like that. So another example is window cleaning, right? I mean, again, these
Mhm.
businesses need window cleaning or commercial cleaning or any of these things. We don't want to go build vacuums or any of that other stuff, right? We're just there to do the service that needs to be done routinely and is inconvenient, right? And so that's where we're building around this brand. And what helps a franchisee is we have all the leads. I'm already servicing them for security. So I can say, hey, I know I'm your security provider, but do you need filters changed? I got a guy, right? And here's my guy. He uses the same software. He's there. I'll refer you to him and he'll be in next week. And it's a warm lead, right? So you don't have to go advertise on Google. You don't have to go spend all this money because you already have a sister business that is servicing them in a non-competitive area, right? It's like a referral. If you're a roofing contractor, which I understand is part of your audience, and the plumber says, hey, that guy needs a new roof. You're like, perfect, I'll be over there tomorrow, right? I
Right.
mean,
Right.
and the roofing guy says, I see the guy's, sprinkler system isn't working, you might want to get over it. And he's an irrigation buddy, right? They all share the referrals. That's essentially what this is in a more infrastructural designed, or a simplistic franchise system way.
Yeah, I love that. I actually was just talking to a peer of mine about how he's nixed the need for, really spending any in advertising, solely focusing on just, referral partnerships, with
Right.
different businesses. So that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that's such a brilliant way to do it. And we've tried to tap into it. We just never spent the time, effort, or energy to really make that do what I guess it's possible. But I love how you've put that all into part of your play there. So, I mean, that's brilliant. What would you say to, anyone listening in the audience that might be considering, now that we know what the benefits of being in a franchise. So like, I feel like perhaps the way it's perceived is like, it's absolutely entrepreneurship, but maybe if they're not understanding, you kind of already went over it in the beginning, but like the difference of just
Sure.
opening your own business versus buying into a franchise, and, the pros and cons, I suppose, and what might be a better fit for someone who's listening right now if they're determining on like, hey, I want to get into business of my own, but perhaps a franchise might be more appropriate for me. How would one discern whether that is or isn't true?
Yeah, great question, Ken. And I think, I would be a terrible franchisee personally, right? I mean, I just am not, I wouldn't follow someone else's system. I feel like I know better, and I'm gonna have hustle and grit every which way I turn. And, these lines on my forehead are a brick wall that I was bashing my head through. And, that's essentially who I am. So I think, for a personality like me, where you're like, hey, I got no quit in me, and I don't care if I make a mistake, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm never going to stop. You should own your own business. Start your own thing, right? Start your own thing, because, and if you're a huge risk taker and you like the returns of that and you're driven by that, be an employee and start your own business, just like I did, right? However, if you're saying, you know what, I want to have a nice, consistent, maybe I was working 40 hours a week and I'm willing to own my own business, but I don't want to make it my life, right? Entrepreneurs, if you're an entrepreneur, it's almost your identity in some ways. They know you as that guy, you're the plumber,
Mm-hmm.
you're the person, your identity becomes your business in some cases. But as a franchisee, you're like, I want a stable business that I can have a little bit more freedom to manage my time. I don't know everything, but I know certain things really good, and I'm really good at managing people and processes. And I just want that perfect recipe, right? And if I have that recipe, I can make it really, really well and have a great kitchen around the kitchen table here, et cetera. So, and maybe a good analogy, since you're the kitchen table podcast, is really Thanksgiving, right? There was
Mm-hmm.
great grandma that originated the recipe, right? She's the one that could throw in whatever ingredients at Thanksgiving that always made sense and it was great. And then grandma started taking that, and she just added a little bit of flavor. Great grandma, she's the entrepreneur, right? Grandma's adding a little flavor. Then there's me, I'm the consumer. I just love whatever they make. I mean, so I think, are you great grandma that originated the recipe, and you're the one that made it that legacy? Or are you grandma that said, I got great grandma's recipe and I added a little bit of sprinkle, and you're probably a franchisee if you're grandma, right? If you're great grandma, you go make your recipe and no one's going to tell you any different. And your hand will be slapped if you're digging in there, just like I used to do, So that's kind of maybe the difference in an analogy.
That's a really good analogy. I think that's a great way to put it, and both have great pros and cons. I was
Right.
using State Farm as an example. When I worked at State Farm, I was totally great with the idea of buying into what was essentially a franchise there, right? Like, so there's still risk and reward there, but you have the stable brand that is State Farm that you're buying into. And I didn't do that, and maybe that's why, is because I wanted to go do my own thing. But anyhow, I think that's a great way to put it. So, because I
Yeah,
have
it's
friends and
understanding your
people.
personality. I think that's what you understood, Ken, is you knew what you were best for. And I think that's the key to being any type of leader. Understand what type of leader you are. And that's really that first book, is Transform to Purpose. Understand who you are, because who you are is applied everywhere you're at. And so if you're confused as to who you really are or what you do best, no one's going to follow you because they see you're confused. And that is customers, that is employees, and as you're an entrepreneur. So clarify who you're best at, right? I mean, I remember starting this business, and when I started this 18 years ago, I had two key employees at the time, and one was getting married and was going on a honeymoon afterwards. She was gone for 2 weeks, and she did all my payroll. And so I'm like, oh no. And so then I was like, all right, I got a backup. And the backup happened to get sick. She actually had some surgery that she had to go to. So I'm like, now it's up to me. Uh-oh. And so then I did this payroll and I thought, okay, I got it. Hit send, submit. And this employee came in and she goes, you shorted me a half hour and I need $11. I'm like, and then I pull out of my pocket a $20 bill. I said, we square? Because I mean, I'm not going to go mess with
Right.
this thing. I don't even know what I'm going to do. And of course, then, the woman came back and she's like, what were you doing? That's illegal. You can't hand them cash for the hours and everything. We're happy. We're both happy. I mean,
Yeah. Who cares?
it's what I did. And so they're like, you're never touching payroll again. I said, we both agree to that. So I realized that, these administrative details are things that I'm just not going to waste my time on, right? I'm going to make it right with people. I'm going to give them the $20, but that's not who I am. If you want somebody that's going to go meticulously comb through everything, it's not me, but that's some people, right? They're really,
Yeah.
really good at that. And so if you know what you're really good at, right? I'm really good at problem solving. If you give me time and a problem, I'll find an answer for you that everybody would like and accept. And so that's what makes me a leader, right? Is I trust me as a leader. I get problems every hour, every day, right? I mean, that's just what they hand to me. They don't hand me the good things. They never come and say, hey, boss, I
Nope.
got this huge win I want to give you. No, they say, I
Nope.
got a problem I want to give you. And so that's where, hey, I'm in the right role for that, is I have a newer and bigger problem each day. And so that's who I understand who I am, and I apply that in everything that I do.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's just, I don't love the problems, by the way, but I love how you phrase that. But no, and then the better you get at being a leader, the better you get at delegating and finding other people maybe possibly more patient at certain problems that you would rather not have to solve. So,
That's right.
I think that's where I'm starting to, for me, just the natural ability to, talk to people, work with people. For whatever reason, people gravitate to me. My dad used to call me the Pied Piper, and it was not always the best thing back in the day, but it became a better thing. You know what I mean? One of those things where he's like, look, you could help a lot of people, because people gravitate towards you. And so, that worked for me in my sobriety journey 8 years ago, 9 years ago, working on 9 years now. And he was like, that's something that you can help a lot of people with. And I hopefully have. And now with the business, same thing, And so if you're a natural people person, people just kind of gravitate towards you, and you work on being a leader because that's just part of it. Then you have to read books like, what Reed have written here, right? Like that's just, there's a staple of books, but like both of the ones he's already written could be excellent, right? Like tapping into what you are good at, who you really are, and moreover, just the leadership principles and like teaching people how to do things well enough that they're doing the things you taught them when you're not looking. That's actually something you said before we got on the show that I really resonated with, just because it's easy when you're there, but you want to get to a point where you don't have to be there, right? Like
Right.
you don't want to have to go in the office and micromanage or be a office manager, right? You want to be able to just not go in and I've heard it said that you have a business when you can step away for 6 months and it makes
Yeah.
money and nothing, it grows, right? That's when you have a business. Like it's not only making money, but it's growing, it's making money. But bills aren't just paid. Like if it doesn't burn down, you have a job, right? Like if
Yeah.
it just
Right.
doesn't burn down, or you step away and it does burn down, you don't have anything. You step away, it doesn't burn down, you got a job. You step away and it's making money, bills are paid, it's growing, you got a business. And like it takes time to get there, but that lead is it exponentially?
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, lead exponentially, really just like the leadership. Can you expand on that? Just like making sure that you're like teaching folks the way you said it earlier, I may be butchering it, but if you can tap into it, it might have just been a fleeting thought to you, but it resonated with me. But do you remember what I was talking
Yeah.
about?
So essentially, the principles that are teaching you there is how to lead exponentially, to your point, that you can get people each and every day another moment that they can manage. And I think I'm going to kind of speak to how it happens, because I think that's
Okay.
probably
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
more
yeah.
relevant
Please.
is what I've learned as a leader, and the principles and tactics that I give you in the book are to teach why it is in their best interest to then work on their own and make the right decisions. Because if you are presenting it as it's you want them to do that for your best interest, they're not motivated by that, right? I've learned over time that people are motivated by their interests, not mine. So even if I'm the manager, they're just going to work for that paycheck, right? And they're saying, he's asking me to do this, so I don't want to lose my job. But if you can help them understand that, wait a minute, I'm doing this because I want more responsibility later, and whether that's here or elsewhere, I'm doing this for my benefit. I'm doing this so that I can get a little bit more responsibility. I can be trusted to do my job, and that'll give me more responsibility, not just keep my job. Right. And so these are tactics as a leader that you can show them and communicate with them that they want to do this for their benefit, not yours. As a leader, we can always come in and say, if you want to keep your job, you got to do this, right? But are they really doing it for the right reasons? They're doing it because we ask them to and they want to get paid. But ultimately, as a leader, what do we want? We want them to do it for their reasons that benefit us.
Yes.
Right. If they wake up and said, hey, boss, I cleaned the cars, filled the gas, and got everything loaded up, and where do you want me to go? Versus the other alternative is saying, hey, you need to clean the cars, fill it with gas, and then go over here. Which business do you want to run? And if we teach them the principles on the front end that teach them that if I have all that ready, he's going to give me more responsibility. That's now we have a business we want to lead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about a leadership lesson that I have, but I don't know how to eloquently put this without getting myself in trouble. So I might have to just, it's costing me more thinking time than it is getting it. But anyway, my wife is an attorney. So, so I want to get all right. You know what? I don't know that I can safely go. But anyhow, the leadership principles from those two books, period, and then the one you're writing now, these are great case studies in just being a leader and probably what it would take. Both franchisee, would you agree, Reed, that both a franchisee and an entrepreneur, you need to be a leader in both, but I suppose more of a free thinker and do it yourselfer versus like maybe a franchisee individual is somebody who's going to be like, hey, I see a proven model that I can expand on and make it better. And it's already there for me to go in there. Cool. Let me go do that. Like that's kind of a good, I don't know, almost a safer bet, perhaps. Would you say that that's like a safer bet than like going out there doing your own thing?
Yeah, sure. I think if you kind of break down society, I would say there's maybe 2 to 3% of society, 1 to 2% that are entrepreneurs in totality, right? True entrepreneurs. But then you probably have 8% or so that would be a franchise owner, right? And the other 90% work for those organizations, right? So I think by and large, the majority of the people are, probably better suited to be franchise owners. And there's people that own a business that are not franchise owners that probably should. And there's very few that are franchise owners that should be an entrepreneur, right? And so just because the largest subset of society. So, and I know before we, kind of prepared for this call, we talked about the 5 levels of leadership as a book that you refer to. And so really think about it that way. What level of leader are you? Right.
Yes.
And
so, a great way to put it, man.
And as you look at those levels of leadership, that's the level of leadership that you should probably put yourself in a position for. So if you are that top level leader, candidly, you should be leading a very large organization because you're doing the organization a disservice by not stepping into that role because they need those top level leaders. Conversely, if you're a level 5 leader, a low or I guess a level 1 leader in this instance, you should not be leading a level 5 organization. No. Right. I mean, you're going to create problems. And if we kind of look around publicly, we can see sports teams that struggle with that. We can see political environments that struggle with that. They just, the leader has risen above their ability to lead. They're in a position that they cannot lead appropriately. And so that's, again, understanding where we're at and then aligning appropriately. So if you're looking at a franchise, see what kind of leader you are and where that is, and then find that right match, leading my kids I coach their sports. And, one of the key things that I think a lot of coaches do over time is they say, I know you're a great rebounder. It's basketball, right? Or you're a good dribbler. I'm not going to make you do something you're not great at because it doesn't work for me either. I don't want to watch you fail. I mean, I have to yell and scream to get you to focus. So that's part of it, putting the players in the right positions to be successful. And that's what a leader does. If you can't see the team that way, maybe you should just be the ball boy and make sure they have a ball to play with, right? And so that's, kind of look at what you see on the court when you see it and then play the role accordingly, right? I think that's a critical part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy, man, especially with the sports teams. But I know we're right up against it. Roger is giving me he's giving me all these signals in the background. That's why you see me keep looking down. He's trying to take the battery, I believe, is where our problem is. But at any rate, Reed, before we go, where can where can our viewers and listeners find you and your books?
Yeah, so readnyffeler.com is a good starting point. Of course, it's in Amazon. I actually have an audio version of the book, and you can just search
Perfect.
Transform Through Purpose and also Lead Exponentially. There's audio versions of both books. We can find it there. They can find it on a site. And ultimately, you can look up the Lead Exponentially. You should be able to search the book there, or Transform Through Purpose, both of which are the books that are available now on really anywhere you can buy your book. Amazon, the audio versions on Amazon, of course, in leadership. you can, and the way I write is really, it's stories, just like I was telling you here, and structure. So there's a story that tells you the principle you're trying to apply, but there's a structure to apply it yourself, right?
Mm,
Sometimes we hear a great story, but don't know what to do with it. But if there's a structure behind it, you can start applying it. And really what I'm trying to do is get you to benefit from it, right? I don't care to sell books per se. I care you to change your business in life, right? I
yeah,
want
I love
everyone,
that.
every listener to get a better life and lead their families better and their businesses better, and then ultimately become a better person as a result. And that's how we get a better society in the end.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you said that. That's a very key point. Like, hey, look, I'm writing this book fully understanding that it's not going to be like a Amazon bestseller, even if it is, but my goal is to make better people. That's wonderful, man. Speaking of which, if you were to leave an imparting quote with our audience, an impactful quote, words of wisdom that affect for generations to come, hopefully, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say you are a steward of your time and talent.
Mm.
And ultimately, that is not for us. It ends with us, actually. It's for the next generation. So, where are you stewarding your time and talent, and who are you giving that to? And that's what leaders do, right?
Wow.
My success will not be determined by the business I build, but by the people I impact. And the people
Yeah.
that I impact. And that's the final chapter that lead exponentially, which is triplicate. Who are you investing in that will invest in someone else? Right? So if you're leading an organization or a family member, where will that family member have impact? And now we can see that great grandma's recipe goes to grandma, grandma hands it to mom, and then we take it, right? Great grandma is impacting mom indirectly, right? Through that recipe. And essentially that's what the principle I'd leave is, you are a steward of your time and talent. How are you investing it to have multi-generational impact? And think about that and then find a way to do it.
Love it, man. That's awesome, Reed. Thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed having you on here, guys. And also reach out too if you're interested in being a franchisee, all of the above. And check him out. Check out his books. Check out all the things Reed. I don't want to say Nyffeler, right? Not
Yeah,
Nyffeler.
that's right. Mhm.
Yeah, I got it now. See, right? It's the wine that throws me. But seriously, check out Mr. Reed Nyffeler, all his books, all his services. Check him out on the podcast when we go live on YouTube. And guys, listen, if you think that your business might need some help and you're in the Maryland DMV or even nationwide and you do insurance restoration or solar, we're looking at taking on a couple clients with a consulting company as well. So if you're curious, go to the kitchentable.net. There's a consulting tab, I want to say, or link. Click that, and we'll see if we're a good fit. But guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.